Today I'm gonna show you how to layer progressive house leads and get an end result like this one. Yo, what is up guys, welcome to a new video. My name is Wildcrow, and yeah, as you can hear in my voice, I'm a bit sick. Don't worry, it's just a cold. And as I said, today I'm gonna show you how to layer progressive house leads and get a bigger and fuller sound. But before going to the video, you need to know something super important about layering. With layering, what you wanna do is achieve a bigger sound, and to create this bigger sound, you need different kind of layers. So for example, you need one lead that is more for the lows, another lead that is more for the highs, another lead that is more in the center, and one that is more in the sides. If you just take two leads that sound exactly the same or super similar, you're not making it sound bigger or fuller. It's just like increasing the volume, nothing else. So well, we have these leads and they sound like this. As you can see, we have 8 layers, and it doesn't matter how many layers you have. You can use just 3, you can use 8, and you can use 12. Depends on every sound, every song, the preset you use, and all those things. And these layers sound like this. So as you can see, each one of them sound different and is adding something extra to the main layer. But the thing is, how to know if one preset is good or not. So basically what you want to do to find the preset is just open a scene, for example Serum, Silent, Nexus, and start looking for presets. And use one that you like. And by the way, all these sounds are from my new soundbank. Yeah, I've released a new soundbank if you didn't know it, and down below in the description you have the link to get it. And there are 80 awesome presets for all the genres, leads, basses, chords, pianos, guitars, everything. So check it out. So I like this one. And I want this sound to be the main one. Now what you have to do is try to add new layers that have something that this one doesn't have. For example, this one is good because in the center and it has strength, but it has no mids or mid-lows. So I found this one. This is also in the center, so it's good because it's giving strength there, but it's more on the low. So if we combine them two together, as you can see, each one is doing something different. But as this is progressive house, we also need super sauce. These sounds are so good because they're gonna cover a lot of space with this kind of noise sound that they have, and they are super wide. This one, for example, is pretty aggressive. And now here we have this one, this more soft. So maybe you're thinking that they sound pretty similar, but if we combine them, each one is adding something extra. For example, what you don't want to do is clone this one and maybe have them two like this. Or just take this one and change it just a little bit, something like this, you know? This is not gonna do a big change. So this was the previous one. And this is the new one. It's not a big change, don't do it like this. Now we have another super saw also from my soundbank. As you can see, this one is covering more the lows. And then I wanted to add the intro one because it's so common in progressive house, so now you know it. It sounds like this. So yeah, we have these 4 super saws and all of them together sound like this. So basically this one is giving some strength, this one is giving like the highs, this one is giving like the lows, and this one is giving a different touch and more depth. But how do you know if they are really doing something? Well, so simple. Just go here, play it, and start muting each one of them. As you can see, all of them are adding something extra, so that's good. If you don't see any difference when you mute one of them, or is too quiet, or is not adding anything, so just delete it. But then as you can see here, I have a piano and a string, because in progressive house, I like a lot to add natural sounds. It gives a really cool vibe. So first we have this piano from Nexus, and then we have these strings. And them two together sound like this. So now I'm gonna play the entire layer and do the same thing. I'm gonna start muting each one of them to see if they are really doing something. So all of them are adding something extra to the layer. Some are more obvious and some not that obvious, but all of them are doing its work. And now is when you're gonna start with the layering, trying to balance the sounds, adding EQ, distortion, reverb, all these things. The first thing you wanna do is go to all the presets, go to effects, and take out all the delays and reverbs of all of them. Make sure none of them have a reverb or a delay. And why do you want to do this? Because here we have Serum, Silent, and Nexus. All of them have different algorithm for the reverb. So in the end, all of them have a different room. So you're gonna combine rooms and it's gonna sound super weird. Sometimes you can leave some of the reverbs if you think that it's giving a really cool vibe to that sound, because there are some sounds that have reverb just to have reverb, and there are some sounds that have reverb or delay that is changing completely the vibe of it. So sometimes you want to keep that reverb. And for example, in the Angel 1, it's so good with this reverb and this delay. So what I'm gonna do is just reduce a little bit the mix, but I'm gonna keep it. So now let's take all of them and put them here in the mixer channel, Ctrl-Shift-L, so we have them all together. I'm gonna select them all, Ctrl-Shift-Click, and right-click here, route to this track only, so we have a bus that I'm gonna call leads. And the first thing I'm gonna do is just balance the volume of all of them, so I make sure they are at the right volume. To do this, just take one of them, put it at one volume, and now add a new one and just match the volume. I like it like this, and now what I'm gonna do is just go one by one and use EQ. Some people are gonna say, hey, don't do this, you always have to check it with the layer. Yes, but it's also good to always check first each sound to try to find those resonances that are super ugly, to cut the lows and all these things. So let's listen to the first one. As you can see, it has some lows that probably you're not hearing, but these lows in the end is gonna sound so bad because all of the leads are gonna have a bit of lows, so always do a low cut. How much of low cut? Of course, not something like this. Make sure that you don't touch the character of the sound. For example, here I'm touching the character of the sound, so I don't want it. Come back. And I'm gonna reduce a little bit of the highs, because I have all the sounds for that. Let's go with the next one. The same, a low cut. I'm gonna cut a bit of the highs, because I don't really need this sound for the highs. And I don't like this frequency. Now that we have the right balance and all the cues that we need, what I like to do is work a bit on the mono stereo thing for each sound. Sometimes one sound needs to be in the center, sometimes it's good to have it more in the sides, and some sounds are maybe way too wide, so you need to put them a little bit in mono. To check this, I'm going to use the ozone imager, and I'm going to check that all of the sounds are not on the red zone. This one is going to be the main one. I'm going to put it completely mono, and also this one that is already mono, but well. For example, I want this one to be a bit wider than this one. So on this one, I'm gonna make it a little bit more mono. So this way now we have the first and second lead in the center, the third is like this, and the fourth is like this. As this one has more mid-lows, I also want it more in the center. Then this one I want it like this, or even a bit wider. This piano, as you can see, is playing on one side. I want it on the center. As I want it to be in the center, but not completely mono, what I'm gonna do is, instead of using this, I'm gonna use the stereo enhancer. I'm gonna make it mono like this. And now I'm gonna use a bit of the wider. So it's in the center, but the stereo. And last but not least, let's take the strings. As you can see, these ones are way too wide and you don't want this. So make them a bit more mono, more in the center. A bit more. Like this. And the entire layer is like this. So now basically we have one sound that is in the center, one that is a bit wider, 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 and one that is completely in the sides. This way we're covering the entire spectrum. And also, as the main sounds are in the center, you're gonna have a lot more strength and the sound is gonna be a lot more in your face. But you're not losing the width of the main layer. So now if you want it a bit wider, you can always increase a little bit like this, but the balance of one in the center, one a bit wider and wider and wider is always the same, so it's good. Now that we have each sound as it should at the right volume with the EQ, with the stereo, the mono, we're gonna go to the bus and we're gonna start working here. The first thing I'm gonna do is put an EQ and do the same thing, cut the lows. So we always leave the space for the kick on the sub bass and try to shape a bit this sound to make it sound cleaner. I don't really like this frequency, so I'm gonna reduce a little bit here. Now I love to use OTT, it's a really cool plugin. So this is before and after. And actually for this bus is gonna be enough. I don't need more EQ or more saturation or something like this, because I think the sound is already really powerful and the balance of the frequencies is good. Sometimes if you think it's needed and the sound is not powerful enough, or it's not covering all the frequency spectrum or all the space, what you can do is add a bit of saturation, for example with Fat Filter Saturn, and with that saturation you're gonna cover a bit more the frequency spectrum, and it's gonna make the sound fuller. Just to show you, it would be something like this, and you can create bands or you can just use presets. And I like to use the basic saturator, and basically I mute the bands. And maybe now I reduce a bit the mix. So this is before and after. Well, actually it's giving a bit of more warmth, so I'm just gonna leave it. And after this I like to use another EQ to make sure I cut the lows, because sometimes with saturation and distortion you can add a bit of lows. And to try to reduce some frequencies that you don't like. Right now, for example, there are some high frequencies that are a bit annoying for me. Around here, so I'm gonna reduce a little bit. And last but not least, I like to use a limiter, and I just use the L1 from Waves, because it's so simple. You just click here and go down and you limit. And I try to not go lower than 6 dB. It will be too much. As you can see, it sounds weird and adds distortion. Something like this will be enough. And with this limiter, what we're doing is just make sure that there are no peaks and that the sound has like an average volume all the time. But maybe you're thinking, hey, but this needs delay and reverb and all these things. Yes, let's go with it. For the reverb, you can do two things. You can just go here and add here the reverb, or click here, left click, and have here a reverb bus. Right now, what it's gonna do is all of these sounds are going here, are gonna be affected by all these effects, and then one part is going to the master, so it's what you're hearing, and one part is going here, and then this is going to the master. So right now, basically, as we don't have any plugin here, any effect, we have the sound 2 times. So it sounds louder. So in the bus, what we're gonna do is put a reverb, and the one I like to use is the Valhalla Vintage Bear, but you can use others. And the only thing you have to make sure, doesn't matter what size you put, the low cut, that depends on you, but make sure the mixing is in 100%, because this is the only way you're gonna make sure that this bus, this sound here, is completely wet. If you want to make sure that you listen only the reverb, what you have to do is just go here and disable this. So right now the bus is going to the reverb, and if we have 100%, we're only gonna listen to the reverb. And what settings do you want to use? Well, depends a lot on you, but usually on leads I like to go on 3-4 seconds on the decay. On the pre-delay I want to go on 29.3 because this is synchronized with the BPM. On the color I like the 80s. And now the size of the tag or the key depends a little bit. Just try. The less highs you have if you use here or on the damping, the farther away is gonna seem the leads are. So I want them to be pretty far away from me. Another thing I like to do is before the reverb, I like to put a delay. With this delay, we're gonna achieve a lot more space. Right now, we have our leads playing one note and we create the reverb of this note. So what you're gonna do with this delay is when you play one note, you're gonna duplicate this note. And then with the reverb, you're gonna create a reverb for the first note, but also from all the duplicated ones. On the delay, I like to use the ping pong, a bit of low cut and a bit of high cut, a bit more feedback and something like this, and with this is enough. After this, in the rear bus, always add an EQ, make sure you cut the lows, make sure you cut the very highs. And I'm reducing a bit here to make it sound cleaner. Right now we can bring this back to the master, and what I'm gonna do first is balance the volume of the reverb. And now what I'm gonna do is go to the dry bus and put here a peak controller, and on the reverb I'm gonna put a fruity balance. What I'm gonna do is sighten the reverb to the dry signal, so this way when the dry signal is playing, the reverb is reducing a little bit the volume, so this way all the notes of the dry signal are gonna be a lot clearer and more in your face. To do this is so simple, I just show you a lot of times. Just right click here, type in value, put 0.2, go here, right click, link to controller, and here you're gonna choose the peak of the peak controller, click here and invert it and accept, and make sure that you don't go crazy like this. You just want to reduce like 2-3 dBs. like this. Last but not least, I like to take the dry signal and the wet signal and send it to one last bus. When you do this, make sure that you click again on the reverb, so this way you have the reverb. And in this last layer, I just want to do the extra touches, like a bit more EQ if it's needed, maybe a bit more limiting because of the reverb, or maybe compress a little bit, or for example add the sidechain. So open a new EQ, let's cut these lows. I want this list to have a bit more emotion and be more in the back, so I'm just gonna reduce a bit the highs. Sometimes I use an OTT, and with this one what you want to do is don't reduce that much on downwards and more on the upwards. And just add like a 10%, 5%, something like this. With the upward, what we're gonna do is make the reverb stand out a bit more if it's needed. Now I'm gonna add another limiter to make sure I cut all the peaks. Like this, enough. And last but not least, I'm gonna add the sidechain. You can use whatever sidechain you want to use. For leads and progressive house, for example, I like to use a lot the first one and around 60-70%, depends on the melody and on the song. And well, this is the end result of this lead layering. And that's it. So as I showed you in this video, the steps of the layering is: first, try to find the main sound that you want for your song. Second, try to add other sounds that add something extra to this main sound that they don't have. Third, make sure that you balance the right volumes for each sound. 4, process each sound individually to make sure it sounds good as you want. 5, make sure that some sounds are in the center, some are in the sides, that some are not way too wide. 6, add processing on the main bus of the leads. 7, create a reverb bus. 8, sidechain the reverb to the dry signal. And 9, create an extra bus where you're gonna have the dry and the wet signal together, and I'm gonna add some processing to make it sound a bit better and also to mix it with other sounds like chords, for example. So well guys, I hope you like this tutorial and it helped you in any way. As you can see, layering is actually so simple. You don't have to go crazy with this. Right now, if you want to learn more, just check this video, and also don't forget to subscribe to my channel so this way you don't miss any tutorial, any video, anything I do. And I hope next time I don't have this cold and I have a better voice and not this sick, ill guy voice. Thank you so much guys for watching, and see you in the next video.